Hello, you all. My name is Mr. Griffith. I'm briefly just going to go over computer science, AP Computer Science Principles, also known as AP CSP. This is one of two AP Computer Science classes offered at Lafayette. I am the only teacher currently teaching these classes, so I'm the only one that you would be interacting with. And so you would get to know me pretty well over the course of all of our classes. In terms of listing out some of those classes, there's an intro to programming class. It is a general class, uh, AP Computer Science Principles, a Java 1 class, and then APCSA. For more on the APCSA class, you would need to watch that video, which I'm sure you can find on the same document that you found this one. But I'm going to go over AP Computer Science Principles in this video. So, what is APCSP? It is a AP introductory course. Basically, it's like AP intro, I guess. Um, it is an introductory course on computer programming, and it focuses on the basic programming skills, as well as a focus on learning about the internet and how the internet works, how data is shared, how all that kind of works, and try to demystify some of that, especially since um, understanding that can play such a big role in understanding day-to-day things that affect their lives, especially as we move forward with more and more things being integrated through the internet, right? Like whether it's wearable technology that you constantly have on you and tracks different things, or even if it's just taking a class or doing a Zoom online, right? Uh, there's a there's a lot of things that are happening through the internet as life moves forward, and it's a good idea to understand and demystify some of that, um, in your life. This class isn't just for beginners. Yes, it can be thought of as an AP intro class, but there are a lot of advanced students who really, really enjoy this class. This class wasn't always offered, so there are some students that they did regular intro, then they did Java, then they did APCSA. They were juniors and they didn't have anything to take their senior year. And then now this class is offered, they go back and take it. And then they're like, wait, I actually really like this class. I wish this had been a thing when I was coming through, but they still actually enjoy this class, even though, yes, they're very quick to learn or relearn or learn in a different language because it's not the same as APCSA, the way I teach this class. Um, for a lot of reasons, just uh, for the curriculums that I have access to teach it from. But uh, beside the point, they come back and take this class. Yes, they can do things more advanced than others who are just learning. They can go further with the different projects that they have in mind. But that's the kind of the fun thing for them is they can actually push themselves a little bit more, having come back to this class. So that's an option, and it's just a cool thing to have as an option. So if you do skip this class, you can always come back and take it later. Um, so this course is for both brand new and more advanced people. So that means yes, we go some pretty slow when we go over some important concepts. i- like iteration and looping and things like that. That an advanced person might be bored with, but again, that gives those more advanced students time to take any projects that we may do and go further with them than they would otherwise have the capabilities of doing as a beginner. But that doesn't mean the beginners are hurt for it at all, actually. This course is split into two halves. One half is focused on that programming and a culminating project, which I'll talk more about that culminating project later. The other half is spent about learning about the internet, and back to what I said earlier about how important that is to understand about the internet. So this class can be thought of in two different sects of understanding computer science, both programming and the internet. The AP test has two parts also, but it's not split as easily. First is the multiple choice test, which actually has both programming and basics of the internet questions. The programming questions typically are, here's a snippet of code. What would be the output, or where they're getting this error? What would be a debugging strategy? How would you fix it, basically? And then the basics of the internet questions. Typically uh, are things that they will have had to practice a lot of different remembering a lot of different initials for things because the internet is chock full of them. Whether it's HTTP, which you've seen plenty, or TCP, or anything like that, they have to start learning all those things, and those can be a little bit harder to remember off the top of your head. But I do think it's really important. Um, there's also some questions on ethics and stuff like that, but mostly the ethics stuff we go over is at the end, almost like a, you've learned all this stuff at the end of this year. Let's talk about how this is happening in the real world. We talk about some of these Senate trials, like if you all recall the Facebook trials, and it became very evident to us that our lawmakers had very little knowledge over what was happening, and their understanding of how even something as simple as Facebook that they even use themselves day to day actually worked. Um, and their understanding of that actually affects, especially if laws are passed, will affect people's day-to-day lives, especially with that limited understanding. So it's important as to be an informed voter, to be an informed citizen in a democracy. It's good to know, um, you know, about these things, and that's why it can be important. You can talk about things like net neutrality, whether you're for or against it. I don't really care. It's not like that's not the point of it. The point is to make people informed, so that when they do want to form an opinion about those things, that they at least have the background knowledge for it. And I think that's incredibly important, especially if those decisions will start being made for people, if they don't know what it is they should be advocating for, or wish they could be advocating for if they just understood it a little bit better. The other part of the test is a coding project that students submit. So they will typically, students that are newer will make some sort of a visual app on code.org. Some more advanced students may use programming projects that they have done in the past in other classes that I teach, and they'll use that. Um, but regardless of what you submit, you have to submit a writing sample to go with it, explaining different parts about it, answering very particular questions that they have. And so that writing is also graded. But it is a weird thing. I never in my lifetime as a student had an AP class where you submitted something before the AP test ever began. Um, Last year they had to actually submit two projects. They got rid of one of those, but it's a weird idea to have to submit something before you even take the multiple choice test, which means you could be setting yourself up for success or failure with something that you've been working on for a while. So we actually take a lot of time out of the year. I actually have very strict rules that I have to sign and say that I followed them about how much I'm allowed to help and not help. Like have to give them exclusive class time, but once the project actually starts, I have to be hands off, other than like technical questions, like problems with the internet and stuff like that. But in terms of like if they run into problems with their coding, I have to prod them in different ways, but I can't answer anything for them. I can't give them answers. Even if I know the problem, I have to like lead them, which is an interesting thing that can be done. But it also leads to a lot of collaboration, which is probably the best part of this class. And the AP test encourages collaboration, as long as you're very clear about giving people credit where credit's due, and learning to understand that process, especially since that's something that's done in the real world. If they want to become computer scientists in their lifetime, it will be very rare that they will come up with something novel, something new that has never been done. Most of the time, they'll work in teams, and they'll have to understand how to work in teams. Or if they are stealing someone else's coding for something that they're trying to do, understanding how to give credit, almost like citing a paper, right? So that's what this is. Prerequisites. What do you need before you can take this class? No, you don't need any programming. You don't need to take intro to programming before you take this class. Granted, a lot of kids who are in the intro class will go to this class after instead of going to Java 1, because they are ready to take the AP class, and they feel comfortable doing so. But um, my suggestion, it's not listed as a prereq, but my strong suggestion is make sure you've had Algebra 1 first. It is harder. It is a much harder class. I interview the students and say, like, what is something that was hard for you? And a lot of times the things that are hard, the programming things, the mathematical parts of them, are things that they would have felt more comfortable with had they had an Algebra 1 class. Especially answering some of those quick multiple choice questions and having to run numbers through programs in your mind is not as easy to do otherwise. That being said, I've had students who are like they're freshmen, they're in Algebra 1. They were not, they were not in their, I guess an advanced track of any sort, and yet they still passed the AP test. So that it's not like you have to have had it, but I will say that the number one thing that people say that was the hardest uh, is generally tied to the mathematical part of things. And that's why I generally say, okay, I would suggest having taken Algebra 1 first, which is why there's probably a lot of freshmen who do Intro to Programming if they have also an Algebra 1 class, and then maybe their sophomore year they take APCS Principles. But you could take this class into your Lafayette or at any point in the computer programming cycle. So maybe you take Intro to Programming, maybe you take Java 1, then you take APCSA like the original track, and then you come back and take APCSP. Or maybe you just, you throw this class in the middle somewhere, or maybe it's the first one you take. The one thing I would say is, and we're going to talk about is what to take after. There is no reason why after this class you should go backwards and take Intro to Programming. You will have already learned all that stuff, and it may be just a very boring year for you at that point. Compared to vice versa, if you take Intro to Programming, you will not have learned everything that's in this class. And we already talked about there's advanced students in this class that really enjoy this class. What's after this class? Most people I will suggest to take Java 1 or Intro to Java. This class is to me the next class in a series of classes. That being said, there are some very, very, very advanced students that really want to make the jump to APCSA. You can consider this as AP Java. I don't suggest it to make that jump at all. But I will admit that maybe you're a junior in APCSP, you've never taken programming before, but you find out you love it, you want to take APCSA before you graduate. Even if you don't feel like you'll do well, you just want to do it before you graduate. It's your last year. Maybe I'll sign you off for that. Maybe you're just an outstanding student that not only did you get an A, because the A didn't tell me a whole lot about excelling. Like to me, that just tells me you were good at what I asked you to do. You turn your assignments in on time. You did your work for the most part. Getting an A won't cut it in terms of me recommending you to make the jump. It'll have to be excelling. The projects that you turned in went above and beyond. The things that you were trying to do went above and beyond. You understood things very quickly, because if I don't see that, I will not suggest you to take APCSA. I'll say take Java 1 first, because you can think of it like a math student skipping pre-calc and going to calculus. Yes, there are kids that are ready for that, but for the most part, I would not suggest it. There are things learned in pre-calc that are not taught in the other classes that will prepare you for the AP calculus class. In a similar way, not exactly, but in a very similar way, this class prepares you for APCSA. And making that jump without it is not easy. The other issue with making that jump, especially if you're young, is we don't have any classes after APCSA. So once you've taken that and you've taken APCSP, there's no other classes here. So if you're like a freshman, you take APCS Principles, then you jump to APCSA. Now you have no more programming classes. You'll have a gap year your junior and senior year, and then you're gonna, maybe get college credit your freshman year of college. So you're actually starting as a sophomore or a freshman spring class level thing. You skip the intro college class, but it's been 3 years since your last computer programming class. That's not actually good for you, right? Like there's no reason to rush through our curriculum if that's what you're trying to do. Granted, we are working on ways to have things like internships and independent studies, but as of right now, I know very little about that process. We are trying to offer it, but that doesn't mean I have a whole lot of knowledge for you. So what I would suggest is to do the things that I can. I would just not suggest things that I don't I don't know very well. So the things that I do know well are how prepared you'll be for any sort of college class if you're not taking gap years between your last programming class, especially if that's what you intend to study. Now, if you're just taking it because you think it's interesting, that's really cool, and I think you should. I think this is one of my favorite classes. That's what I'll wrap up with on this. This is one of my favorite classes to teach, and if I had been a student, it would have been one of my favorite classes to have. Especially since there's a lot of things learned in this that wouldn't be taught in a normal programming class. especially regarding the internet, and the idea of having part of your AP test being an actual project that you probably can work collaboratively on with other people just sounds like a cool and interesting and unique AP class that's creates a very different environment than other AP classes where you're stressing for a test, a multiple choice test, and FRQs and things like that. And like AP would feel, AP feels almost more relaxed in that sense. Um, Not that it is necessarily relaxed, but it does feel that way because you feel like you're constantly connected with others, and each other's success actually is your own success regarding the AP test. Because if you and your friends, or you and the people you make friends with throughout the class, become really good at certain things, then when you have to do your project, you feel more capable having people there ready to help you, right? As opposed to these other tests where you go in on test day and it's you by yourself. Yes, the APCSP has the multiple choice part where you are by yourself and you just take it by yourself. I get that. But the fact that half of the test, I think it even counts more than half of the test, is something that's done ahead of time is pretty cool. So that's this class. That's AP Computer Science Principal. I highly suggest it at least some point in your 4 years at Lafayette. And you shouldn't feel dissuaded from taking it, even if you've never had programming. Uh, many students have passed with no knowledge of programming. In fact, some of the people that didn't pass last year, it wasn't because they didn't have knowledge of programming. A lot of it had to do with complications due to technology and COVID. If I'm being very honest, things not getting submitted on time like it was asked, or whatever it might have been, and that was a different issue than, you know, how well they could have done. And in fact, it was like a mid 70s% pass rate for the class, and it would have been higher had we not had those issues. Obviously, I think highly of my students, and I think all of them should have passed. So but anyway, that's AP Computer Science Principles. I hope you'll consider it. Bye.